Hi there, welcome to the latest edition of my 10-minute rant. And the topic in this one is the question, have the Greens struck the final nail in the coffin for independence? Now, to give some background for those who are maybe living under a rock or possibly don't live in Scotland, but the current Scottish Government is a coalition between the SNP and the Green Party. And they're seen as an independence party, hence the tie-in with them and the SNP when the SNP didn't achieve an overall majority at the last Scottish elections. So they had some agreements on some policies, some nice cuddly green ones that the Scottish Government were held to, and in return for that, two Greens were given ministerial roles. That was Slater and Harvey. And they both made comments recently. The most sort of damning one, Slater. And Slater, in the last 24 hours, has put to the press that in the up-and-coming Westminster election, which everybody thinks will happen within the next 6 to 12 months, depending who you listen to, that the Greens will in fact put up for election more candidates than they've ever done. Now, what does that mean? How can that possibly signify the end of independence dreams? Well, if you think of most elections up until very, very recently, when Alba Party became a thing, nationalists really only had one place to vote, and that was SNP, which is why they got such massive victories in the Scottish Parliament up until the last one, where they didn't get a clear majority. And as I've spoke about before, when you get to Westminster elections, and normally the Scottish elections at times when independence isn't an issue, you have two types of voters. Normally, ones that always vote Labour, ones that always vote Tory. And Unionists tried to encourage people to tactically vote at the last Scottish election, and it failed. And to be honest with you, I was quite disappointed how massively it did fail, because, and that's probably easy for me to say, because I voted for three different parties in my adult life, and I've voted Labour, I've voted Tory, and I've voted even Liberal Democrat back in the day. Because previously, when I was younger, I would just vote for who I felt the person that was standing for election would best serve me as a constituent, which I suppose is the way you're meant to vote in elections, but most people vote for parties, not people. Recently I have tactically voted. I didn't even look at policies and stuff. My main objective was to rid Scotland of the SNP, whether that's at Scottish Government or representatives down in Westminster. So I don't. It's easy for me, and I suppose it's easy for me to say because of my past where I've been a floating voter. But there's a lot of people out there that are staunch Labour or staunch Tory, and sometimes they just, they won't see the wood for the trees. If you could even sit them down and say, look, if you vote for the opposite as you would normally, there's a 90% chance you could get rid of the SNP in your area, and if you don't, the SNP will probably just win. They're that stubborn that they'll still just, and it's their right, listen, folk can vote for who they want to, and for whatever reason they want to, but that's what we've been up against. And I think, as a unionist who wants to protect the union, and is quite happy with the union, and wants the best for Scotland, I feel getting rid of the SNP is the most important thing, or getting rid of the power for the SNP is the most important thing in my radar just now as a voter. And that's the problem Unionists have had, where you could vote Tory, you could vote Labour, and that still, would sit well with your Unionist beliefs, but it done terrible things for the Unionist cause of protecting the union, because traditionally your independence voter, just by default, didn't matter if they were ex-Labour or Tory, they found it quite easy just to go bang, I'll go to SNP, and they probably, to be fair, took more voters up here off the Labour Party than they did the Tories. If we're perfectly honest, there was more Labour voters in recent history anyway, so that's how they get into power. And the nationalist vote really wasn't getting split anywhere, and the Alba parties came up, obviously, the last election there, and put in some regional candidates and whatever. Don't know what they're going to do come the general election, because I don't think they've declared, unless I've missed it, whether they're going to put candidates in for Westminster elections. But it's the first and only time people who are convinced they want independence can actually vote for someone other than SNP. I know people who love independence, love the whole thought of independence, but hate the SNP, but have to vote for the SNP, and have done for the last probably 4 or 5 elections, just purely because the Senates are out to get to their independence. Well, come the Westminster elections, these people have at least 2 options. And by even suggesting that they're going to do that, you can probably understand that that will get the goat up of SNP, and in particular, the SNP MPs in Westminster just now, who know fine well that their jacket is on a sugarly peg, and they like their wee, their wee cushy number and the jobs that they've got, apart from Mary Black, but I'll maybe come on to her in a different video. But the rest of them are want to protect their position within Westminster. And they would have to wait probably another 12 months if they get ousted out of Westminster. They would then probably fancy being a Scottish Parliament rep. And there's no guarantees that if the polls continue the way they are just now and the general election goes the way I really hope it does, that by the time we get to a Scottish election, I hope and genuinely believe that the SNP's power will disappear and they will no longer be Parliament in Scotland, which would be fantastic, wouldn't it? So, if you imagine you're a Westminster MP for the SNP and you hear this news, that you might be up, not only you're dwindling in the polls, but now you're giving potentially independent voters an option of splitting the votes and making your number, which has probably been easy for the last couple of sessions at Westminster, be a bit more difficult, and every opportunity that comes away to make that more difficult for you, you're going to start fighting and screaming. So I genuinely believe that this will have ripples throughout not just the Westminster SNP group, but the SNP party in general. They'll see this as a threat to them. Not a threat to the Greens becoming the major party at Westminster or indeed the Scottish Government, but they will, if I can see this as a, just a member of the public that's a proud Scotsman who is wanting rid of the SNP because I feel it's the best thing for Scotland, if I can see that, these people who have got all these spads and people that read into everything more than I can, they'll know it as well. So the next 6 to 9 months will be interesting to see when the general election's called and to see exactly what the Greens do and furthermore to see what Alba do. But the fact that people that want independence and wish independence in Scotland will have an alternative, I guarantee you that people who want independence are coming away from SNP. And if you don't believe me, you don't believe my words, if you're one of these sort of cybernats or a cult member, I challenge you to go on to any of my videos that I've put now for the last couple of months and run through the comments. And in the ones that are quiet comments, you'll see at least one person saying, I used to vote SNP. When you go into the bigger ones with lots more comments, you'll see far more. And if that's people that are saying that coming onto my videos, which is a very, very small percentage of the population, you can imagine upscaling that. And I must admit, if I was an independence dreamer, separatist, wanted, Republican, I think any level-minded one has got to be happy that there's an alternative to the SNP. Because before they were almost forced to go in there and put their X next to the SNP logo just because they wanted independence. And I believe very, very strongly that a lot previously had no love or desire for the SNP. But now they don't need to go through a sort of emotional turmoil of voting for a, inverted commas, Unionist party, as Labour and Conservative are both seen nowadays. They can tick another box, no vote for SNP, and have their conscience clear that they're still voting for a pro-independence party. Every single person that does that is a bigger risk to the SNP. And Harvey, he seems to be quite happy with the Labour Party now. He's actually said recently that he he fully expects to see a Labour Party in power in Westminster soon, and he welcomes that because he feels that they are a better party for renewables, etc. So, can you imagine if the Greens did get some extra seats at the next Scottish election, Labour got back their traditional voters that had been voting SNP for a while, the Unionists, you know, can put the big boy pants on and take part in some tactical voting. Who knows? You could have a Labour stroke Green coalition at the next Scottish Parliament, and I wouldn't mind that. And listen, I'm not a big Green Party or a Labour Party admirer. As I say, I don't really particularly enjoy party politics at all. But if you put any combination of all the other parties available in Scotland, and even although the Greens come a close second to SNP in my hate list, I don't think there's any combination that could be worse than what we've got just now. And I'm all up for anything that will try and make Scotland as good as it was before the SNP started destroying the country in the 15 odd years that they've had control of the Scottish Parliament. So, anyway, as usual, if you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more, hit the subscribe button and the notifications. If you want to watch some more videos, there'll be some recommendations here. And most important of all, have a great day. Bye now.